Welcome to the Wellness Lab Digest, where we help you to absorb powerful, life-changing insights from top wellness experts with our daily, bite-sized wellness podcast summaries. Each episode is packed with distilled, powerful takeaways to boost your health and well-being. To support this podcast, please scroll down on whatever app you're listening on. Ratings and reviews are helpful. Even better, just send the show to a friend. Or check out our sponsors at the bottom of the page, or simply click the Support the Show link.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're diving deep into something you hear about all the time.
Yeah.
Dopamine. You know, that brain chemical everyone's always talking about.
Right.
We're going to break down a YouTube video by Andrew Huberman. He's a neuroscientist from Stanford.
Cool.
The video is called Controlling Your Dopamine for Motivation, Focus, and Satisfaction.
Catch tattle.
It is.
Yeah.
Now, I know it's a bit of a long one,
Uh-huh.
but don't worry, we're here to make it easy to understand.
Okay.
So you can actually use this knowledge
Mm-hmm.
to improve your life.
I like it.
Because you often hear about these dopamine hits.
Right.
As if it's this simple thing.
Totally.
Is that really all there is to it?
Well, no, dopamine's actually a lot more complicated than that.
So it's not just about those quick bursts of pleasure.
It's definitely part of it,
Okay.
but dopamine is more like a motivation regulator. It influences pleasure,
Uh-huh.
but also your drive, your cravings,
Okay.
even how you perceive time.
Oh, wow. That's already more complex than I thought.
It is, yeah.
So how does this all actually work?
Think of it like this.
Okay.
Dopamine has two settings,
Okay.
a baseline level and peaks above that baseline.
Gotcha.
Those peaks are what you experience when you, say, eat a delicious meal
Mm-hmm.
or achieve a goal
Okay.
or, check social media.
So the baseline is like this constant hum.
Yeah, like a steady state.
Okay.
And then the peaks are those exciting moments.
Got it.
But here's the thing.
What's that?
Those big dopamine peaks that we're all chasing,
Yeah.
they can actually lead to a dip.
A dip.
Yeah, below your baseline afterward.
Oh, so it's like a dopamine hangover.
Exact.
That makes so much sense.
Yeah.
It's like that feeling after you finish a big project
Uh,
or you finally hit a fitness goal you've been working towards.
Right.
You're on top of the world for a bit.
All right and high.
Yeah, and then bam,
Yeah.
you just want to sleep for a week.
It's the dopamine dip.
Wow.
And that's why, constantly chasing those big dopamine hits can really backfire.
Oh, interesting.
Because from an evolutionary perspective,
Eh.
those dopamine dips after achieving something
Mm-hmm.
were actually crucial for survival.
Really?
Yeah, so imagine, our ancestors finding a berry patch.
Okay.
They get that dopamine rush,
Mm.
but then that dip afterward,
Yeah.
it pushed them to keep searching.
So they wouldn't just sit there and starve.
Exactly.
Wow. So it's like our brains are wired for the chase,
The seeking.
not just the reward.
Right, and the problem is,
Yeah.
in today's world,
Mhm.
we're just surrounded by things designed to trigger those dopamine spikes.
Oh, I see.
Constantly.
Yeah, like what?
I mean, social media,
Oh.
notifications,
Mhm.
sugary drinks,
Okay.
streaming services.
Yeah, they're all designed to give you those quick hits.
Exactly.
But it's making us feel worse in the long run.
Yeah, if you're not careful.
So how do we break free from this constant dopamine roller coaster?
Well, Huberman talks about something called an intermittent reward schedule.
Intermittent reward.
Yeah.
So not getting that dopamine hit every single time.
Right. Think about a casino.
Okay.
They've mastered this, right?
Mhm.
Slot machines,
Yeah,
they don't pay out every time you pull the lever.
right.
And it's that unpredictable reward
Yeah.
that keeps people hooked.
Wow, that's crazy.
It is.
So how do we apply this to our own lives?
That's the question.
Should I flip a coin every time I want to check social media?
You know what?
Yeah.
That's actually a great idea.
Really?
Yeah, the coin flip.
Okay.
It removes that pressure of making the perfect decision every time.
I like that.
And it introduces that element of unpredictability.
It's like tricking my brain into thinking it's gambling.
Exactly.
I love that.
And it's not just about things like social media.
Okay.
Huberman also talks about the power of reframing effort as the reward itself.
Wait, finding dopamine in the effort, how does that even work?
Think about it.
Okay.
When you're only focused on the reward at the end of a task,
Uh-huh.
it can actually make the effort feel longer and less pleasurable.
Because you're just thinking about that dopamine hit you'll get when it's done.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
But if you can shift your mindset
Yeah.
and start associating the dopamine release with the actual act of striving, The hard work actually becomes intrinsically rewarding.
It's like those people who love tough workouts.
Yes.
Or find flow when they're tackling a complex problem.
Exactly.
They're not just grinding it out. They're actually enjoying the process.
That's it.
So it's not about denying ourselves pleasure.
No.
It's about being more strategic with our dopamine and finding ways to make the journey itself enjoyable.
Absolutely.
Working with our brains,
Right.
not against them.
Exactly.
It makes so much sense. We've talked about these dopamine peaks and baselines and how to work with them.
Yeah.
But is there anything we can do to actually boost our baseline dopamine levels?
That's a great question.
Like, is that even possible?
It is.
Really?
Yeah, Huberman suggests a few things.
Okay.
Activities, even supplements
Oh, cool.
that can help with that.
What kinds of things?
Well, one interesting one, you've
Yeah.
already touched on a bit.
Okay.
It's intermittent fasting.
Wait, fasting?
Yeah.
You mean like not eating?
Right.
How does that tie into dopamine?
Well, food,
Mhm.
it's a very natural dopamine trigger.
That's true.
So when we fast,
Okay.
we're delaying that gratification.
Interesting.
But the fascinating thing is,
Yeah.
many people actually start enjoying the feeling of fasting itself.
So they're rewiring their brains
Yeah.
to associate dopamine with self-control,
Yeah.
not just the reward of eating.
Exactly.
Like they're training their dopamine system to be more resilient.
That's a good way to put it.
Wow.
And this whole idea of training your dopamine system leads us to another example Huberman talks about,
Okay.
cold exposure.
You mean like cold showers and ice baths?
Yep.
I've heard of those.
You have.
Yeah, but I'm a little skeptical.
Mm-hmm.
Are you saying those can actually raise your baseline dopamine?
That's what the research suggests.
Seriously?
Yeah.
How does that even work?
It's thought to be connected to norepinephrine.
Norepinephrine.
Yeah, it gets released
Okay.
when you experience that shock of cold,
Hmm.
and then that norepinephrine activates your dopamine reward pathway,
Interesting.
leading to this like sustained increase
Okay.
in those feel-good chemicals.
So it's like tricking our brains into thinking we've accomplished something difficult,
In a way, yeah.
even if all we did was stand in a cold shower for a few minutes.
Right.
I like that.
And there's actually scientific evidence to support this.
Oh, there is?
Yeah, Huberman talks about this study
Okay.
where people were submerged in cold water
Uh-huh.
for a full hour.
An hour?
Yeah,
Wow, that sounds intense.
it is.
Yeah.
But their dopamine levels
Yeah.
continued to rise for hours afterward.
Really?
Yeah, and they reached levels comparable to what you'd see with cocaine use.
Seriously?
Yeah.
I admire their dedication to science, but I'm not sure I'm ready for that level of intensity.
That's fair.
I don't think I could handle an hour in cold water.
Of course, not everyone's into that.
Yeah.
But the good news is
What's that?
even shorter bursts of cold exposure.
Like a quick cold shower in the morning.
Exactly.
Oh,
Could
yeah.
get a noticeable impact.
So it's about incorporating it into your routine,
Yeah.
even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
Right.
And there's actually a growing body of evidence
There is.
that suggests
Mhm.
regular cold exposure
Yeah.
can have other benefits too,
Like what?
like improved mood and focus,
Uh-huh.
increased metabolism,
Mm,
and even greater resilience to stress.
that's right.
That's incredible.
It is.
I'm definitely going to be incorporating more cold showers into my routine.
Good for you.
But shifting gears a bit,
Okay.
let's
Yeah.
talk about another factor that influences dopamine:
All right.
sleep.
Sleep.
I have to admit,
Mhm.
I wouldn't have immediately thought of sleep as being directly linked to dopamine.
It's not always the first thing that comes to mind,
Right.
but sleep actually plays a crucial role
Okay.
in regulating our dopamine system.
So how does that work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, during deep sleep,
Okay.
our brains actually prune back some of the dopamine receptors.
Wait, so we lose dopamine receptors when we sleep?
In a way, yes.
Hmm.
But think of it like decluttering your dopamine system.
Okay.
By reducing the number of receptors,
Yeah.
we actually increase the sensitivity of the remaining ones,
Interesting.
making us more responsive to dopamine when we're awake.
So it's like hitting the reset button on our dopamine system,
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
allowing us to experience those dopamine peaks more fully
Exactly.
when we need them.
That's right.
Wow.
So that's why getting enough quality sleep
Mm-hmm.
is so important
Okay.
for maintaining healthy dopamine levels
Mm-hmm.
and avoiding that feeling of being burned out.
Right. Or constantly eating stimulation.
Exactly.
So if we're chronically sleep deprived,
Yeah.
our dopamine system is basically working overtime.
It's trying to compensate
Yeah.
for those missing receptors.
No wonder we feel exhausted all the time.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah. And we struggle to find joy in things we used to love.
It can definitely have that effect.
Wow.
And over time,
Yeah.
that can lead to a lower baseline dopamine level and a decreased ability to experience pleasure
Okay.
and motivation.
So it becomes a vicious cycle.
Exactly.
I think a lot of people can relate to that.
Yeah, it's a common problem.
Feeling tired all the time.
Yeah.
And just not finding the same excitement in things they used to enjoy.
Especially in today's world.
It is a fast-paced world.
It is.
But the good news is prioritizing sleep can make a big difference.
It can.
Huberman recommends 7 to 9 hours of quality sleep per night.
At least.
So that includes
Yeah.
creating a relaxing bedtime routine,
Uh-huh.
avoiding screen time before bed,
Definitely.
and making sure your bedroom is dark, cool, and quiet.
All those things contribute to better sleep.
Right.
Those small changes
Yeah,
can have a huge impact
I agree.
on your sleep quality.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result, your dopamine system.
This is so fascinating.
It is.
I'm starting to see how interconnected everything is.
all connected.
Like our biology and our behavior.
Mm-hmm.
We can't just compartmentalize our physical health and our mental well-being.
That's right.
It's all one system.
It is.
That's the beauty of neuroscience, though.
Right.
It helps us understand ourselves.
Our deeper level.
Yeah, and it empowers us to make better choices.
I like that.
Choices that support our well-being.
Yeah, it's all about making informed decisions.
Well said.
Yeah.
Before we move on,
Okay.
I want to touch on something Huberman mentioned that I found really interesting.
What's that?
The power of mindset
Okay.
in shaping our dopamine response.
Interesting.
He talked about how our thoughts and beliefs can actually influence how much dopamine our brains release.
Really?
Yeah, in response to certain experiences.
So it's not just the external stimulus itself, it's
Yeah.
our internal interpretation of it.
Exactly.
Wow.
He gave this example of two people exercising.
Okay.
One person dreads every moment of it,
Yeah, know that type.
and the other person finds it invigorating.
Hmm.
And those different mindsets
Yeah.
will likely lead to different dopamine responses.
Even though they're doing the same activity.
Yeah.
That's fascinating.
It is.
Yeah.
And it brings us back to that idea of reframing effort as the reward itself.
Uh-huh.
If we can train our brains to see challenges as opportunities for growth and enjoyment,
Okay.
we can tap into a whole new level
Yeah.
of motivation and satisfaction.
It's like choosing how you want to feel.
Right.
Regardless of the circumstances.
That's a powerful concept.
It is.
It suggests that we have more control over our dopamine system than we often realize.
We do.
It's not just about external manipulation.
Well.
It's about cultivating
Yeah.
this internal state
Okay.
that supports dopamine release
Uh-huh.
and well-being.
It's about working from the inside out.
Absolutely.
And that's where things like mindfulness and gratitude can come in.
Oh, yeah.
By consciously focusing on the positive, you can actually train your brain to release more dopamine.
That's incredible.
It is, and it works.
Even in the face of challenges.
It's like rewiring your reward system
Okay.
to find joy in the present moment.
Instead of always chasing that future gratification.
Exactly.
I love that.
Yeah.
It's a powerful reminder that we're not just passive recipients of dopamine.
I'm not.
We actually have the power to actively shape our own experience.
That's right.
Wow.
Yeah.
This has been a really eye-opening conversation.
It has.
I'm already feeling inspired to put some of these insights into practice.
Me too.
It's really about those small changes
Yeah.
in our mindset and behavior.
Right.
Can have a huge impact.
On our neurochemistry
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately our well-being.
That's what it's all about.
Absolutely. That's it for this part of our deep dive on dopamine.
We've covered a lot.
We have, but there's still so much more to explore.
We're just getting started.
Make sure you stick with us for the next part,
It's going to be good.
where we'll dive even deeper into this fascinating world
Of dopamine.
and how it shapes our lives.
Until then,
Stay curious
keep learning.
and keep exploring.
We'll see you soon.
All right, see you in part 2. All right, let's jump back into our dopamine deep dive.
Okay.
We've talked about a lot already,
We have.
but there's one area I'm super curious about.
What's that?
Sex.
Ah, yes.
We all know there's a link between sex and dopamine.
Of course.
But what's actually going on in our brains?
Well, Huberman actually goes into a lot of detail about this.
Does he?
Yeah, he talks about how both the anticipation of sex
Oh.
and the act itself can basically double our baseline dopamine levels.
Double. Wow, that's a pretty big spike.
It is, yeah.
So it's not just one big dopamine rush.
Not necessarily.
Okay.
He actually breaks down the different phases of sexual activity
Okay.
and their specific impact on dopamine.
Wait, So different parts of sex
Right.
trigger different dopamine responses.
Exactly.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, for example, the anticipation and pursuit
Okay.
leading up to sex
Yeah.
can trigger a big release of dopamine.
It's like that foraging analogy we talked about earlier.
Right.
Like we're driven to seek out the reward,
Mm-hmm.
and that anticipation itself is rewarding.
Exactly, and this applies to all genders.
Okay.
But here's where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
For males, the peak dopamine release happens during orgasm.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
But what about for females?
Well, research suggests that for many females,
Yeah.
the peak dopamine release might actually happen after orgasm.
After?
Yeah, during the resolution phase.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
It
I
is.
never would have guessed that.
It's pretty interesting.
Is there like an evolutionary explanation for this?
There are some theories.
Okay.
One idea is that this post-orgasm dopamine release in females
Yeah.
could be tied to pair bonding.
Hair bonding.
Those feel-good chemicals
Okay.
might promote feelings of connection and closeness,
I see.
which would have been beneficial
Yeah.
for raising offspring.
That's fascinating.
It really highlights how complex this all is.
It really does.
The interplay of hormones and neurochemicals, it's not just a simple dopamine hit.
So much more nuance.
Absolutely.
So we've talked about working with our dopamine system, but can we actually increase that baseline level?
We can.
Is that even possible?
Yeah. Huberman suggests several activities
Okay.
and even some supplements
Oh, cool.
that can help with that.
What kinds of things?
Well, one we already mentioned is cold exposure.
Right. The cold showers and ice baths.
Exactly.
I'm still a little skeptical,
I get it.
but you're saying those can actually raise our baseline dopamine.
That's what the research suggests.
Okay, but how?
It's thought to be connected to the release of norepinephrine.
Or pinephrine.
Yeah, which is triggered by the shock of cold.
Okay.
And then that norepinephrine activates the dopamine reward pathway, leading to a more sustained increase
Interesting.
in those feel-good chemicals.
So it's kind of like we're tricking our brains
Right.
into thinking we've accomplished something difficult,
No way.
even if all we did was stand in a cold shower.
Exact.
I do like that idea.
And there's actually scientific evidence to back this up.
Oh, there is?
Yeah, Huberman mentioned a study
Okay.
where participants were submerged in cold water for a full hour.
An hour
I
again?
know it's a long time.
Yeah.
But their dopamine levels continued to rise for hours afterwards,
Seriously.
reaching levels comparable to cocaine use.
Wow. That's incredible.
It is pretty remarkable.
But an hour?
Yeah, I know.
I don't think I could do it.
Of course, not everyone's up for an hour-long ice bath.
Yeah.
But the good news is,
What's that?
even shorter bursts of cold exposure,
Okay.
like a quick cold shower, can have a noticeable impact.
So it's really about incorporating it into your routine,
Exactly.
even if it's just for a few minutes each day.
Right. Consistency is key.
And there's actually more and more evidence
First.
suggesting that regular cold exposure
Yeah.
can have other benefits too,
Like what?
like improved mood and focus, increased metabolism, even greater resilience to stress.
That's right.
Wow, that's pretty impressive.
It is. There's a lot of potential benefits.
I am definitely going to try to incorporate more cold showers into my routine.
Good for you.
All right, so
Yeah.
shifting gears a bit again,
Yeah.
let's talk about sleep.
Sleep. Yeah.
I have to admit, I wouldn't have immediately thought of sleep as being linked to dopamine.
It's not always the first thing people think of.
No.
But it's actually super important.
Okay,
Sleep plays a crucial role in regulating our dopamine system.
so how does that work?
Well, during deep sleep,
Yeah.
our brains actually prune back some of the dopamine receptors.
Wait, so we lose dopamine receptors when we sleep?
You could say that, yes,
Okay.
but it's actually a good thing.
Really?
Yeah, think of it like decluttering your dopamine system.
Okay.
By reducing the number of receptors,
Mm-hmm.
we increase the sensitivity of the remaining ones,
Interesting.
making us more responsive to dopamine when we're awake.
So it's like hitting the reset button
Exactly.
on our dopamine system
allowing us to experience those peaks more fully.
when we need them.
That's right.
That makes a lot of sense.
And that's why getting enough sleep
Yeah.
is so crucial
Okay.
for maintaining healthy dopamine levels
Gotcha.
and avoiding that feeling of burnout.
Right. Or like constantly needing stimulation.
Exactly.
So if we're not getting enough sleep,
yeah,
our dopamine system is basically working overtime
we're just going to compensate.
to make up for those missing receptors.
Exactly.
No wonder we feel exhausted all the time.
And you might find it harder to enjoy things
Yeah.
that used to bring you pleasure.
It's like a vicious cycle.
It can be.
I think a lot of people struggle with this.
Oh, definitely.
Feeling tired all the time
Mm-hmm.
and just not finding the same excitement in things they used to love,
It's a common problem.
especially in today's world.
Yeah, it's a fast-paced world.
It is.
But the good news is
Yeah.
prioritizing sleep
Mhm.
can make a big difference.
How much sleep are we talking about?
Huberman recommends aiming for 7 to 9 hours
Of quality sleep.
a night.
So that includes
Yeah.
creating a relaxing bedtime routine,
Uh-huh.
avoiding screens before bed,
Mm-hmm.
making sure your bedroom is dark and quiet. Right.
Yeah, all those things can help.
It's amazing how much those small changes can actually impact our sleep
It really is.
and, in turn, our dopamine system.
It's all connected.
This is so fascinating.
It is.
I'm starting to see how interconnected everything really is.
It's like one big system.
Yeah, our biology, our behavior,
Mm-hmm.
we can't just compartmentalize our physical health and our mental well-being.
That's right. It's all intertwined.
That's the beauty of neuroscience, though, right?
It is.
It helps us understand ourselves,
On a deeper level and
Right.
make more informed choices.
choices that support our well-being.
Exactly.
Well said.
How?
Before we move on,
Okay.
I want to touch on something that Huberman mentioned
What's that?
that really resonated with me.
Okay.
It's the power of mindset
Mindset.
in
Yeah.
shaping our dopamine response.
Interesting.
He was talking about how
Yeah.
our thoughts or beliefs
Okay.
can actually influence
Mm-hmm.
how much dopamine our brains release. Yeah, in response to certain experiences.
So it's not just the external stimulus itself.
Yeah,
It's our interpretation of it.
exactly.
That's fascinating.
It is.
Yeah.
Like he gave this example of two people exercising.
Okay.
One person is dreading every moment of it,
Uh-huh.
and the other person is finding it invigorating.
Interesting.
And those different mindsets
Yeah.
will likely lead to different dopamine responses.
Even though they're doing the same activity.
Exactly.
Wow, that's incredible.
It is.
Yeah.
And this kind of brings us back to that idea
Okay.
of reframing effort as the reward itself.
Right.
If we can train our brains
Yeah.
to see challenges as opportunities for growth
Mm.
and enjoyment,
Okay.
we can tap into a whole new level of
Yeah.
motivation and satisfaction.
It's like choosing how you want to feel,
Exactly.
regardless of the circumstances.
That's a really powerful concept.
It is.
It suggests that we have more control
Right.
over our dopamine system
And then we think.
than we realize. Yeah. It's not just about external manipulation.
No, it's not.
It's about cultivating this internal state
Mm-hmm.
that supports dopamine release and well-being.
It's an inside-out approach.
Absolutely.
And that's where things like mindfulness and gratitude can come in.
Oh,
By
right.
consciously focusing on the positive, you can actually train your brain to release more dopamine,
Even when things are tough.
even in the face of challenges. Yeah,
That's amazing.
it is, and it works.
It's like rewiring our reward system
Exact.
to find joy in the present moment.
Instead of always chasing that future gratification.
I love that.
Yeah, it's a powerful shift.
It is.
Yeah,
This has been a truly eye-opening deep dive.
it has been.
I'm already feeling inspired
Yeah.
to put some of these insights into practice.
Me too.
I'm starting to see how even small changes
Yeah.
in our mindset and behavior
Can make a big difference.
can have a huge impact on our neurochemistry
Mm-hmm.
and ultimately our well-being.
Absolutely.
That's what it's all about.
It is. We've covered a lot in this part.
We have.
But there's one more piece to this dopamine puzzle
Okay.
that we need to talk about.
All right. Well, stick with us for part 3
It's going to be good.
as we wrap up this exploration
Of dopamine.
and all its complexities.
We'll see you there.
All right. Welcome back to the deep dive.
Back for more.
We've been talking all about dopamine.
Yeah.
How it works,
Mm-hmm.
how to optimize it,
Right.
even how to train our brains to release more.
Uh-huh.
But we got to talk about the other side of the coin, too.
The dark side.
Downsides of dopamine.
Right. We can't just talk about the good stuff.
Exactly.
We have to acknowledge that there are some potential risks.
When we're talking about those dopamine peaks
Mm-hmm.
and that drive to seek rewards,
Yeah.
we also got to talk about addiction.
That's right.
And Huberman actually uses a pretty striking example in his video.
What's that?
He talks about this young man who developed a really severe video game addiction. It just shows you how strong those dopamine pathways can be.
Yeah, things like video games, social media, gambling,
Right?
they all tap into those reward circuits in our brains.
And while they can be enjoyable in moderation,
Mm-hmm.
problems arise when those circuits are constantly bombarded.
With dopamine.
With dopamine, yeah.
Exactly.
Because when we're constantly chasing those dopamine hits,
Yeah.
our tolerance builds up. We need more and more stimulation to get the same effect.
It's like a downward spiral.
And eventually, even things we used to enjoy just don't do it for us anymore.
Right. It's like that saying, addiction is a progressive narrowing of the things that bring you pleasure.
That's a good one.
And the consequences,
Yeah.
they can be really devastating.
I mean, in the case of this young man, Huberman talks about
Yeah.
his video game addiction
Mm-hmm.
led him to withdraw from school.
Wow.
He was neglecting his relationships.
It took over his...
He was even exhibiting symptoms of ADHD.
That's really
Yeah.
sad.
It's a reminder that this isn't just about feeling good.
It's not.
Dopamine imbalance can have a really serious impact on our lives.
It can affect every aspect of your life.
But there is a silver lining to this story.
Oh, there is?
Yeah.
What's that?
So this young man, after doing a 30-day digital detox,
Okay.
he actually saw his symptoms resolve.
Wow, really? So he was able to reset his dopamine system.
He was able to reset his dopamine system, yeah,
And get back on track?
and regain control.
That's incredible.
It is. It's a great example of neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity.
Yeah, the brain's ability to change and adapt.
So even when we push our dopamine system to the limit,
Uh-huh.
there's still hope.
There's still hope for recovery.
That's encouraging.
It is.
So it really starts with
Yeah.
recognizing the problem.
And making a conscious choice to change.
We have more power than we think.
We do. So much of it comes down to our behavior,
Absolutely.
breaking those dopamine-seeking habits.
Right. And finding healthier ways
Mm.
to stimulate those reward pathways.
And the good news is,
Yeah.
a lot of the strategies we've been talking about,
Okay.
they apply here too.
Like what?
Intermittent reward,
Okay.
finding dopamine in the effort itself, engaging in activities that naturally promote dopamine release.
Those all make sense.
It's about being mindful and intentional.
Yeah, it's not about deprivation.
You know.
It's about making conscious choices.
Right. So whether we're talking about overcoming addiction or just optimizing our dopamine system
Right.
for better focus, motivation, and well-being.
It all comes down to the same principles.
The principles are the same.
Yeah.
It's about being mindful and
Yeah.
intentional
With our dopamine.
with our dopamine.
Yeah, I like that.
It's like being mindful of our dopamine intake,
Okay.
just like we're mindful of our calorie intake.
That's a good analogy.
We wouldn't eat an entire cake every day.
Hopefully not.
So why would we constantly bombard our brains with these dopamine-inducing stimuli?
It's about finding that balance
Right.
where you can still experience pleasure and motivation
Yeah.
without sacrificing your well-being.
That sweet spot.
Exactly.
So as we wrap up this deep dive,
Yeah.
what are some things our listeners can do?
Some actionable steps
Actionable steps, yeah.
to start applying these principles to their lives.
I think the first step is awareness.
Okay. Awareness of what?
Just start paying attention to the things that give you that dopamine boost.
Activities, substances.
Right.
Whatever it might be.
Notice how you feel afterward. Are you experiencing that dopamine hangover?
Uh-huh.
Are you finding it harder to enjoy the things that used to bring you pleasure?
Those are good signs to look out for.
Those are good indicators that maybe it's time to make some changes.
Some adjustments.
And remember, you don't have to do everything at once.
Right. Start small.
Just start experimenting with some of the strategies we've talked about.
Like what?
Try that coin flip idea before you engage in a dopamine-boosting activity.
Okay, the coin flip.
Yeah, I like that.
Challenge yourself to find enjoyment in the effort itself.
Instead of just focusing on the reward.
And don't forget about those powerful tools we talked about
Yeah, like what?
for resetting and optimizing your dopamine system.
Okay.
Sleep,
Sleep, yeah.
cold exposure.
Those are big ones.
Those can make a huge difference.
It's a journey, not a destination.
That's a good way to put it.
It's about fine-tuning your relationship with dopamine
To create a life that's pleasurable and fulfilling
in the long run.
in the long run. Yeah,
This has been a really great conversation.
it has. I've learned a lot.
Me too.
I'm walking away with a whole new understanding of dopamine
That's great.
and how I can use it to my advantage
That's what we hope for.
to live a more intentional and fulfilling life.
That's the goal.
Well, that's it for our deep dive on dopamine.
I hope everyone enjoyed it.
I think they did.
It's been a fascinating exploration.
It has, and thank you for joining us.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world of science and self-discovery.
Until then, keep learning.
And keep exploring.
Thank you for listening to the Wellness Lab Digest. If you receive value from the podcast, I have 3 asks of you. 1, share the show on social media with your friends and tag the show at the Wellness Lab Digest on Instagram. Number 2, please leave a rating and review in whatever app you're listening on. And last but not least, please let me know what topics you would like us to cover in the future. You can contact me at empoweringmen.org/contact. And right now we have a free ebook to get you started on your wellness journey as well. That's empoweringmen.org/contact. To support this podcast, check out our sponsors at the bottom of the page or simply click the Support the Show link.